Hi, I'm John, the MD of IntroCar, and I'm posting to you today because we've introduced a new range of suspension bushes for the Silver Seraph and for the early Arnage series. When I say early Arnage, I'm talking green label and the red label, and also the Birkin and Le Mans models. Currently it doesn't apply to the later Arnage R, Arnage T, Brooklands and Azure, but we're working on that. These are quite different from what we normally do. If you can see these here, these are original front suspension bushes for the cars I mentioned earlier, and you'll see they're quite different in design from the others that we have here. The notable difference is that this is a polyurethane material, whereas the bushing in these is rubber. So it's worth going back to look at why we need these and why we need to replace them. Anyone who's driven these cars for a long period of time or worked on them will know that they go through suspension bushings. And the reason for that's pretty simple. The car's very heavy. It was actually the heaviest car that was produced by Rolls Royce motor cars, weighing in at just under 3 tons for the standard version. So heavy car equals heavy use of suspension components. It's just how it is. So I thought I'd start off by talking a little bit about how the original bushes work. Now the original bush is formed, as you can see here, by 2 tubes. You have an outer tube and an inner tube, and then a rubber or a polymer, which is probably a synthetic rubber material of some sort. And the way these function is that as the suspension operates, you can see the arm behind me here, as it's moving up and down or slightly backwards and forwards. This is moving, this bush, this inner tube, which is bonded to the rubber, which is also bonded to the outer tube, is moving in opposition. So it's twisting like that, and it's also moving in and out. So there are what they call axial and radial forces at work. And so effectively what happens is this bush will be doing this, like that, through all of its service, through all of its use. So it's in and out and in and out, like that, repeatedly. So in fact, if you were to actually map any point on this rubber material, you would actually see that it travels quite a long way as it moves in and out. So with these, as the suspension operates, the molecules that are in this synthetic rubber is being continually stretched and relaxed and stretched and relaxed. And actually the energy that's absorbed by these is actually converted into heat. And one of the things that's quite interesting is if you put one of these on in a lab and you repeatedly put it under pressure, either vertically or laterally, you'll actually see that the performance of the rubber actually degrades as heat gets into the material and it becomes more elastic and softer. Now, eventually the molecules in this bonding material break down, and typically the bush fails. Either the rubber bush here will split, or more likely the bonding between the inner and the inner tube and the bush will separate. So that's generally the reason that they fail. So, what's different about a polyurethane bush? Well, the first thing you can see is there's no outer tube. It doesn't need one. The second thing is that the inner tube is separate. It's not bonded, and so what actually happens is that this remains relatively static within the arm. And this instead rotates, so that there isn't any twisting or stretching of this material. And secondly, there's no outer bush which you have to press in. So there are some advantages to polyurethane. Now the first thing is that polyurethane in itself actually lasts longer than rubber or synthetic rubber. Rubber materials tend to leach some of the compounds that are in the mixture into the atmosphere over time, so that eventually, even if you had a car that had not done any miles, the suspension would still have degraded substantially over a period of time if it was left. And that's simply because the rubber material itself would have degraded to some degree from when it was originally made. Polyurethane doesn't suffer from that, and not only that, it tends to be better at dealing with ozone and also with oils and other things that tend to degrade rubber components. Now the other thing is, because the tube swivels freely, you don't get this problem with bonding breaking down or materials having to do lots of extra work. So these tend to last longer. We call them lifetime bushes because, generally speaking, you'd kind of expect these to last, we'd hope, somewhere near the lifetime of the car. The other massive advantage is these are a lot easier to fit. As you can see from this is actually an interference fit, and this is a rear bush. This is actually here. This is the lower arm, and you can see this here. This has to be pushed in to this arm, or pressed in, and in fact, in order to make sure that it goes in parallel, there's special tools to enable you to do that, and it's quite a difficult job. If we take this, which is the polyurethane version of that, this is the rear of the bush. They are slightly different. That's the front. You can tap those in with a rubber mallet, so there's no tooling required. Then, once they're tapped in, there's lubrication applied, and this can just be slid in afterwards, and then you can bolt up using the normal procedures from the car. So if you're interested in more of this, we have there's a lot more details on the website. You can go to if you go to the Arnage section and go to any of these part numbers here, there's a set of instructions and a user guide, and also gives you more some of the information I've spoken about today. So I hope that was of some interest. We look forward to people using these and trying them. I've certainly got them on my car, and I can tell you that it really has been quite a transformation. So any questions, let us know.